Hello, hello. Good afternoon, and welcome to the Black Leadership Circle's Professional Development Webinar Series. My name is Chrissy M. Thornton. I'm the president and CEO of Associated Black Charities, and the Black Leadership Circle is powered by ABC. So we are so excited to be here with all of you today for this learning opportunity. Just a little bit quickly about the Black Leadership Circle. Founded just last year in January of 2024, we are together to respond to a need for progressive, inclusive, and supportive safe spaces for Black executive leaders. Also, we're concerned about the need for capacity building. We want to work on creating pipelines of support and opportunity for other Black professionals to begin their journey into executive level leadership. And then lastly, we found the need to amplify the voices of Black leaders in our region so that we can continue to be change makers, we can continue to be in the forefront of leading movement work and freedom work for Black communities, and that we could do it together. And so for those three reasons, the Black Leadership Circle is comprised of a number of C-suite executive level Black professionals in our region who are committed not only to the work, but committed to one another. And so with that, we offer professional development learning opportunities, typically hosted by our advisory council members. And today is no different. We're here today to talk all about Black executive presence. And it is my pleasure to invite on screen with me our participants from our advisory council leadership today and ask them to come on screen, unmute, and let's get going on this learning opportunity. Excited for you all to meet Violet Apple and Jade Merritt, our moderators today, and our panelists, Dr. Tony Draper and Johnny Fielding. And with that, I turn over today's session to our leaders. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Chrissy, and thank you so much for just everyone for being here today. We are so excited. This is going to be a great program. We have a great co-moderator here, and I also have two outstanding panelists. So with that, today what we're going to do is we're going to talk a little bit about the whole Black executive presence and what that really means when we show up in our professional and even social settings. And together we're going to kind of begin to explore the complexities of showing up authentically. It's so interesting. I hear that word authentically all the time. So I'm interested to hear how that plays out for our panelists today. I'm going to talk a little bit about how we navigate bias and expectations and how physical appearance and communication styles or communication plays a part in that. We're going to go down the road a little bit also and talk a little bit about mental health and what role that plays. I just want to say May is Mental Health Month. And so I do think that with a topic such as this, that we need to also talk about how we show up with our own mental well-being. So with that, I want to just share that we have two fantastic panelists. Today we have as a panelist Dr. Francis Tony Draper and Mr. Johnny Fielding. And so Dr. Draper is the CEO and publisher of The Afro, and Mr. Fielding is the co-founder and program director of Lead by Example. And didn't do a much more formal introduction because in the first question, they're going to have an opportunity to talk a little bit more about what they do. But before we go on, I also wanted to just introduce my co-moderator, who is Jade Merritt. Many of you might know Jade. Jade is a Baltimore native, and she is also the founder of and executive director of Mikey's Miracle, and she is also the founder of the Black ED Network. So I think we've got introductions kind of underway, and oh my goodness, I'm Violet Apple. I am the founder of V Apple Consulting, where I specialize in governance and strategic planning and serving in the capacity of an interim executive directors. With that said, we're going to go ahead and move forward. And I want to start off this first question, and I want both of our panelists to answer this. And so I'm going to ask the question, it's going to be very specific, but I want you to tell us a little bit about what you do professionally and how you personally navigate Black executive presence in the different rooms that you find yourself in. And Dr. Draper, I would love for you to talk about this also from a context of being in the business of producing the oldest Black newspaper, the Afro, and how it may impact how you navigate any forms that you find yourself in. So we're going to start with you, and then we're going to go to Mr. Felding, and I'm asking you to talk about it from your viewpoints of navigating through Lead by Example. So, Dr. Draper, take it away.
So first, let me say thank you. It's an honor and a privilege to be on this panel today with you, Violet and Jade and Johnny. And so the Black Leadership Circle is showing up here to inform, as Violet said and Chrissy said, but also to help us all just, navigate all of the things that we're trying to do, especially in this environment. And so as you heard Violet say, I am currently the publisher and CEO of the 132-year-old Afro-American newspaper. I'm fourth generation. We're the nation's longest running Black-owned family newspaper. So I come from a family that's steeped in civil rights and journalism and public advocacy. And so my great-grandfather founded the Afro in 1892 with $200 in venture capital from my great-grandmother. That's another story for another time. My grandfather, Carl, who served as publisher for many, many decades, was a global thinker and academic who used his pen and platform to challenge segregation laws and inform Black communities. I give you that background because that's what helped to inform who I am. My parents were educators and trailblazers, and I've had the privilege of continuing that tradition in both media and ministry. So early in my career, I was a Baltimore City public school teacher. I taught French, Spanish, and manners, not always in that order. And then I became one of the first and only Black female stockbrokers at a major national firm as a result of a court-mandated integration order. I've served as a founding pastor of a community-centered church in South Baltimore. I've been to school a bunch of times. I don't want to bore you all with all of that. But in every room that I enter, from corporate boardrooms to political roundtables and grassroots gatherings, I try to bring the full weight of that history with me. And I don't know if you asked about Black executive presence, I think you did, but navigating Black executive presence to me means understanding that I represent both a legacy, yes, right, the future of Black excellence, advocacy, truth-telling, and I try to enter every single space grounded in authenticity, but in tune with the dynamics at play. I don't dim my light. I don't try to be who I'm not, but I do read the room, and we can talk about reading the room later if you'd like. So that's a brief introduction, in terms of, and we're more than our degrees, and we're more than our positions, right? So we're more than that.
Absolutely. Fantastic. Thank you so much. Mr. Felding, go ahead.
Nice. Thank you. Thank you. And again, I'm also humbled to be a part of this panel as well. Just an opportunity to share my perspective and some of my history and background as well. Again, my name is Johnny Fielding, co-founder of Leading by Example. Leading by Example is a behavioral health family strengthening institution, is how we like to frame it. because again, what's centralized in our service model is fundamental therapy. But what we recognize was that the target population that we were created to respond to was individuals in Baltimore City. And again, I'm a Baltimore native. I grew up in East Baltimore. I'm a product of Baltimore City Public Schools. So I have a lot of experience with some of the trials, tribulations, and challenges that emerge from those communities. So Leading by Example was created as a solution or an attempt to be a solution to respond to some of those challenges. And the way that we structured our business model, again, with therapy being the central service line, but we've also structured an array of services that enable us to be able to respond to different needs of the family. Because again, one of the things we recognize is that individuals, people, young people, they don't exist in isolation. And when we see a person shows up, when we see a person show up, we see a family. So again, when we're thinking about strategic planning, when we're thinking about interventions, and we're thinking about methodologies to be able to respond and provide a level of restoration for not only individuals but the family, that's what we're taking into consideration. So for me, it's interesting as a co-founder with navigating certain rooms while being a Black executive. So internally in the organization, because I'm a founder of the organization, it's not a lot I have to kind of control for. But again, when I'm outside of my organization, because again, one of the things that we do as an organization is we have made a concerted effort to be very, very active on the policy front. So that's kind of like one of the things that we're passionate about, because we believe in not only participating in the process, but we believe in helping to shape what policy looks like, helping to shape the regulatory landscape of the actual services that we're operating in, and just us functioning as a leader in that role. It enables us, just from a practical business standpoint, to be able to see around the corner. So for me, that's where some of my consciousness has to be elevated with navigating different rooms. Because again, when I'm navigating certain rooms, first and foremost, I'm always going to be operating with a heightened level of self-awareness, which means acknowledging that, again, I am a Black executive, and also acknowledging that, there may be stereotypes or biases that I may encounter. So those are the things that I'm always at the forefront of my conscious walking in. But again, I'm preparing for those rooms and for the conversations in those rooms. So if I'm aware that I'm walking into a certain room, I'm going to do as much research as I can, again, with the information that I have available, to be in a position where I can kind of prepare myself. So again, if things go left or someone maybe say something offensive, I can be in a space to be prepared to just manage and deal with that situation.
Fantastic. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
So when you were saying you prepare, do you think or have a definition of what, when you think of Black executive presence? I'm just curious if you have a definition, or is your definition in how you prepare yourself?
Yeah, I have a definition, a general definition. I think Black presence is just an authentic expression of who you are, which includes your life experiences, which includes your values, which includes your principles and your belief system. So that's like a fundamental, and I keep that in front of me again, because I don't want to run. I'm not going to hide who I am. So I show up as a Black executive, and I'm going to demonstrate and illustrate a level of excellence and a level of pride in my presentation and my communication, and also be aware that I'm also carrying, I think that's important, the piece that Dr. Draper shared in terms of, her being a generational business, because again, she's carrying, in every room that she shows up in, she's carrying the legacy of her grandfather and other members of her family who have maintained that post and occupied that position. So again, I know my experience isn't as substantial as that, but again, I'm first generation. So again, I want to always show up with a level of excellence, and always show up putting my best foot forward at leading by example, no pun intended.
You know, I think that, and we're going to move into Jay, but I just want to make this comment that sometimes there is pressure that comes with the carry, you know, the carry of legacy and the carry of what you want, a past that you're bringing with you, and the future that you want. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that a little bit later, but um, I also just love what you said about your values and who you are when you show up. You don't put those on the shelf or put them to the side or cater them to the circumstances. Who you are, and that's who you bring to the table. So very, very powerful. Thank you so much for sharing that. I want to throw this over to my co-moderator, Jade. And Jade, if I didn't say enough about you in your bio, please feel free to add, because Jade comes with an incredible background and knowledge. But I want to throw it over.
No, thank you so much, Violet. And again, Dr. Draper and Mr. Fielding, for just this conversation, very important conversation today. And you did an excellent job, just in terms of the introduction. I wanted to kind of speak to next, and Mr. Fielding, you mentioned it around some of the biases and also cultural expectations when we talk about Black leadership. So one of the roles that I serve in is founder of Black ED Network. And it really speaks to how we navigate some of the disparities that exist as we are navigating our roles as Black leaders. There have been research and surveys done, namely the Race to Lead report, that speaks to some of the challenges that Black executive directors or people of color face when navigating leadership roles. So could you all speak to perhaps how you navigate some of the biases or cultural expectations, but while also maintaining your authentic self in doing that? And then what have been some of the strategies that have helped you to succeed? And so if you don't mind, Dr. Draper, if I could start with you, and then Mr. Fielding, if you could kind of take a tackle at that question as well.
Wow, Jay, we could be here a long, long time. Listen, for me, it's not about performing for others' expectations, about showing up on purpose. You know, sometimes people expect you to be, they have these stereotypes of who you are even before you come into the room, right? And so sometimes they expect you to be silent, or they expect you to be overly agreeable or fiery or confrontational, right? So I don't show up based on what others expect. I show up based on what the moment requires and what the mission demands. So in rooms, and I've been in plenty of rooms, and I'm sure those who are watching have, and you all have too, where I'm the only or one of a few Black people, one thing I'm really intentional about is not just finding my tribe and staying with it. It's comfortable to do that, right? It's comfortable to say, wow, there's Violet and Jade and Johnny over there. We're the only four in the room, and we find ourselves clustering that way. And so I don't do that, but I have to be intentional about that. To say to myself, you know, I'm going to intentionally not perform to others' expectations. So if I'm the only person, the only woman, the only one, you know, I know I'm not the only one carrying a generational legacy. But I've learned not to shrink, but also not to shout unless the moment calls for it. For tone matters. It's possible to be firm without being harsh, clear without being combative, powerful without, you know, really raising our voice. And usually when I'm going someplace, I'm already thinking before I go. What is it that I want to accomplish? Who do I think might be there that I want to, you know, talk about, right? And then keep the main thing the main thing. All of us know the distraction, all the distractions we have now. It's just a tool used to derail us. I stay anchored as to why I'm in the room, what I came to accomplish, and recognizing and pushing back against false narratives that they're false narratives in the room before we get there. Right? And I don't know if this lends to your question or not. I'm just going to give you an example. So one of the most persistent and damaging assumptions that people make in some of these rooms is that Black automatically means poor. Black automatically means uneducated. Black automatically means in need of saving. So it's
Mm.
not just a media problem, it's baked into our textbooks, policy memos, funding proposals, social science frameworks, right? It's all of that. And so I don't challenge that. I don't get into debates with people about that, but I embody the evidence against it, you know. And so I do, you know, you all ever been someplace and you get like a policy briefing or you do a little cheat sheet or something before you go. I, I try to do that, especially in rooms where it's a new room.
Mhm.
I'm not sure who's going to be there, but I'm sure of how I want to show up and what I want to accomplish. So, and I learned that over time. Now, that's not something that I naturally knew what to do, but I learned that over time. And like I said, being the only Black stockbroker at Merrill Lynch
Mhm.
a long time ago, where folk ask you the craziest questions that you finally have to say to them, look, we put on our pants one leg at a time, just like you do. Stop asking me about everything Black. That's a whole
Yeah.
different question. Okay, I'm gonna stop.
No, thank you, Dr. Draper. And I just wanted to lift up because I see the comment section on the statement you made about learning not to shrink or shout. And so we are lifting that up. That most certainly resonated with me, particularly how we go into rooms. And so thank you for that piece. Now I want to turn it over to Mr. Fielding to share some of your thoughts around the question.
Yeah, I think you know, very, very powerful commentary that Dr. Draper shared. Again, I have a similar philosophy because again, not just when I'm preparing to walk in rooms, but I actually subscribe to this concept just in life in general. I'm always super conscious and aware of what is the ultimate goal. Like, what am I ultimately trying to accomplish, right? And I'm working backwards from there, right? So if I'm identifying and I'm clear about what it is that I'm ultimately trying to accomplish, I'm in a process where I'm reconciling how I'm preparing, how I'm showing up, what my communication is, how I'm responding to people, and I'm reconciling and aligning whether or not that aligns with what my ultimate goal is. So again, I think what that allows me to have is a clear compass and not be distracted by the noise because
Yeah.
noise is real and it's very present. I think for me, in addition, early on in my career, you know, I walked in rooms with an assumption that that I was naturally going to encounter possible you know, discrimination or biases, and you know, just encounter that type of energy. I think, however, as I've grown professionally, I, I I no longer operate with that particular disposition. And when I'm entering rooms now, I'm entering rooms with an open mind. However, I always maintain that I have a what I like to frame as refined antennas to identify discrimination or biases or racism or other things that we may encounter as Black executives. I can share this quick story. And again, I'm a part of I'm a part of an organization that's a advocacy organization for all behavioral health and mental health providers across the state. So we all get together on a yearly basis and we go off to a retreat. And I had this experience where we were around the fire pit. And this event is for not only for executives, but some of the executives can bring some of their staff as well. And we were sitting around a fire pit and we were done the actual working portion of the day. And we were at more of the social portion. And one of the executives made a recommendation or a suggestion that we play a game. And the game was called Murder Mystery. And the premise of the game, this is my first time playing a game, but the premise of the game was everybody around a circle, you would close your eyes, and then the facilitator of the game would walk around while everyone has their eyes closed, and you would select a detective and you would select a murderer. And then everyone opens their eyes, and then you close your eyes again, and she would walk around and she would tap someone, and that person would be murdered. And then you would have to try to select who the person that actually facilitated the murder. And I had an experience where I was actually the detective. I was selected as the detective, and it went around a couple of times, and a couple of people got murdered. And then this one young lady, and again, she was from one of the rural counties in Maryland, and she said, well, I think that Johnny is the murderer.
Mm.
Again, when you articulate that, there's nothing wrong with that, but you have to give some rationale and reasoning why you believe that this person is the murderer. And what was interesting is that, and again, I'm the only black person. Well, it was one other black person in the circle. I was the only black male in the circle. And you know, it was her opportunity to share her rationale and reasoning why she selected me as the murderer, her response was like, "Come on, like, do you guys see what I see?"
Mm.
And you know, I was kind of taken back. But again, for me, um, I didn't confront her. I kind of went through the formal process of speaking with the actual executive of our organization. This person was not allowed to come back to the retreat. But I will say this: I regret not actually saying something to her in that moment, not necessarily because of me, because it was another young African American woman professional in that circle. And
Mm.
she saw that happen to me, and I'm actually in a leadership and an esteemed post within this organization. So that's one of the things that I actually regret, not actually confronting her and helping her course correct her disposition and her thoughts. I hope I answered your question.
No, you did. And thank you for your transparency and sharing that story. I think oftentimes many of us find ourselves in situations where we may not have spoken up or shared our thoughts initially. And so I think that's very real and sometimes how we're navigating, and that's really the truth to it.
Yeah.
And so, again, I appreciate you sharing that and just your transparency behind it. I'm going to turn it over now to Violet. We're going to shift the conversation just a little bit, just in terms of kind of, some recent articles and reviews. And so, Violet, I'll let you kind of have it for our next question.
Okay. But first of all, I want to thank both of you for the answers that you just gave. You gave us a lot of nuggets. I'm glad this is being recorded because I got to go back and I have to
Yeah.
write some of them down. I can't do that right now. But I also really appreciated when you talked about um, this is what I used to do, or I show up differently. The reality is that we are all at different stages in our um, confidence and where we are. So the more you can share when you're sharing examples would be great, and the more that you can share like where you were and where you've grown to, I think that would be helpful as well. Because as Jade said, we all find ourselves in these situations, and it doesn't matter what part of our career we're in, we still find ourselves in these moments that give us pause. I'll put it that.
Yeah.
So I wanted to just ask this question. Now, I'm not trying to take us down a rabbit hole. This is not about sports per se, but I was reading an op-ed by an author or by a young man who wrote an op-ed for the Grio. So that, I was reading the Grio, yes. And it had to do with Shedeur Sanders and the draft and all that other kind of stuff. The question isn't about the draft. It was about, from his standpoint, I want to just read a quote a little bit about what he said. He was really writing about um, his thoughts, and these are his thoughts and his feelings. But I thought it would add to this conversation today. And he felt that Black men, and this was his quote: "Black men must be humble, but not too humble; confident, but not too confident; successful, but never too proud." He said, and when it's a moving target designed sometime to break spirits. And when that message gets internalized long enough, it starts to chip away at mental health. It breeds anxiety and depression. And so I really want to take a moment to kind of shift and start talking about mental health. And the question is, can you talk about the impact mental health has on our ability to show up authentically and bring our best Black executive presence to the table when we feel it's never enough? And sometimes we do feel like what we're doing is just not enough. So speak to that, and I'm going to start off with Mr. Felding. I'd like for you to answer that because you're in this area
Yeah.
of mental health. So
Yeah.
I'm going to
Yeah.
go to you.
Yeah, it's definitely my lane. What's interesting is that the first thing that I would share, and this is for everyone. First and foremost, be thankful for a stable mind.
Mm.
Sometimes we can miss that, and sometimes we can take having a stable mind for granted. First and foremost, be very conscious of that, and just be thankful for a stable mind because you know what the data shows and what our experiences has taught us is that the mind is fragile. It's fragile. So again, the piece that you outline in terms of the moving target and never feeling good enough. I think what's interesting is that um I think that there are instances where it can trigger traumas. And I think those traumas show up differently depending on your upbringing, because I think there's also subsets of the Black experience, there's subsets of the African American experience. I think that was really important that Dr. Draper pointed out earlier in terms of there is an assumption sometimes that all Black people are poor or come from impoverished communities, and I think that trauma. What I would like to identify is that trauma in my experience shows up differently, because coming from an impoverished community, when I talk about the traumas being triggered, it's gonna look different, right? I was actually a person that actually came from an impoverished community, so just being in those environments, in those communities, and seeing your loved ones and your friends murdered at a very young age, again, that's trauma. And carrying that burden with you and carrying those expectations, and again having to be in situations where you're expected to perform at a high level, which is connected to the young man Shedeur Sanders in terms of his experience. And I do agree that in some instances where the target seems to continuously move, that can have an adverse impact on your mental health, and um, that could produce and create past traumas that show up, which could ultimately lead to a level of anxiety, depression, and sadness, or different mental health symptoms that could arise.
Dr. Draper, do you have anything you want to add?
I do. I didn't mention this in my background, but I was a licensed clinical therapist at one time. You know, I'm looking at a lot of different things.
it.
I tend to pursue what I like. But anyway, here's my nugget I'd like to drop. Treat yourself to therapy.
Mm.
There's so much stigma around mental health and around therapy. It's less in our community than it used to be, but it's a treat. Just like you get your hair cut, your hair done, your nails done, or whatever. It's something that think about it this way. If you had a heart problem, you go to a cardiologist, right? If your back is hurting, you go to a spine person. You go to take care of your entire self, your physical self, right? Your spiritual health and your mental health.
Mm-hmm.
When I was training to be a therapist, one thing we had to do was go into therapy ourselves, put ourselves on the other side of the couch, if you will, and work on our own issues. All of us have things. Sometimes what happens is we wait till we have a crisis,
Mhm.
and then somebody says, you ought to see somebody. And then we're like, either I'm okay, or I'll get to it, or whatever. I say to people that before it becomes a full-blown crisis, there are times that you need to talk through things with folk, and it's not necessarily your best friend or your social media contact. It's a person who can actually listen to you for a whole 40 minutes, right? Ask the right kinds of questions and focus on you.
Mm-hmm.
So we're doing better in our community, but there's still a lot of reluctance around that. But we have to protect our mental health, especially in this environment that we're in now.
Mhm.
We just need to do that. And depending on what we're dealing with, there are different levels of mental health. And it doesn't mean, and I've heard people say to me, well, you know, I'm not crazy. That's not, it has nothing to do with, that's not, there's no diagnosis in the DSM, Johnny will tell you, that says crazy. But there are things like anxiety, right? And depression and avoidance and all kinds of things that, you know, you just might want to have, you know, a little bit of time to work through. And it's a process. So that's all I want to do. Want to say about that time, but it's a process. It can be a treat. It can be something that you do to take care of yourself. And maybe it's not necessarily in the therapist's office, but it's definitely being intentional about caring for your mental health and your mental self.
Yeah. Yeah.
I really appreciate that so much because so many times we think we got to handle it. You know, we hear things, handle your business, you know, be strong and all of those, you know, but resilience comes, I think, sometimes, as you said, in knowing when we need to help ourselves. And when we're in situations where we feel like we're dealing day to day with bias that is preventing us from either moving up in our jobs, moving into a home we want to move in, a neighborhood we want to live in, or just, you know, just that day to day, when the minute you walk out your door, there is bias that is going to not, that's going to impact your life. So I really appreciate your saying, you know, treat yourself to therapy. This is about treating ourselves good, but also understanding that sometimes everything we can't handle by ourselves, and maybe we shouldn't try to handle it by ourselves. So I don't want to turn this also into a session just on mental health, but I just felt like we couldn't talk about this without talking about some of those things. And so with that, just thinking, are there emotional intelligence skills that you would suggest that Black executives have to help influence the spaces that they are in that maybe weren't designed for us? Or do you have any suggestions around that?
That's for either one of us.
Either one.
You know, own your voice, whatever your voice is. Trust your instincts, right? If it's not feeling right, looking right, it's probably not right. But lead from your own values and know what they are. We don't have to just go along to get along or conform to succeed. I already said you don't have to shout to be heard, and we don't have to carry every burden alone. And I think it's really important, you know, to find mentors who challenge you, who mirror you, and rooms that see you and not just use you. Let me say a little bit more about that. Sometimes rooms we're invited in are just to use us. It's to check a box.
Wow.
But you really are not a part of the room. You're not really a part of a conversation. Your ideas are not really welcomed. And so sometimes we push to be in rooms that are not helpful to us career-wise. They're not helpful to us mentally. They're not, and you know, and we're not really we have something to bring. And I don't believe in forcing myself into rooms where I'm really not wanted. And where because there are a lot of rooms we can go in. And so I like to go into rooms that I know are going to uplift our people and make a difference, you know, in the spaces that I have some control over.
Outstanding.
And if you can't find that room, build it.
Yeah.
Okay. I like that.
If you can't find that room,
You build it.
build that room. Become the first generation. Do the violent consulting. Do the Black Ed Network. Make the space. You know, I've heard people say, well, you know, I wanted to be in a corporate boardroom, and they're not well, start your own corporation, get your own board.
Right. That is so true. That is so true. Jay, do you want to take the next question?
Yeah, I'll add something.
Oh, no. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I'll add something. I think, you know, just from an emotional intelligence standpoint, first and foremost, self-awareness, you know, starting with a level of self-awareness. I think that's extremely important. And also, again, understanding what the ultimate goal is. And then I would also say, choose and pick your battles wisely. because every fight may not be your fight. Every battle may not be your battle. And with taking into consideration self-awareness, again, being aware of what your bandwidth and what your capacity is, right? Again, and everyone is not everyone's not really designed to I guess break glass ceilings. I just was having this conversation with my mentor, and he's really big on breaking glass ceilings. And his mantra is glass ceilings need to be broken with TNT. That's what he believes. And I'm like, yeah, but you know, that's true. But everyone's not equipped to handle TNT. And everyone can't handle TNT. So just being aware of that, what you can do in terms of, you know, what your ultimate mission, what your ultimate goal is, and just be conscious of that, and just recognize that you can't take on every battle, and it's in understanding that it's a marathon, right? And you have to pace yourself because you don't want to burn yourself out. You don't want to, you know, put yourself in a position where, again, going back to the mental health piece, where you have a level of fragility with your mental health.
Okay. Good stuff.
No,
Go
thank
ahead.
you both for that. And I want to kind of shift a little bit towards kind of, and I know there was some great advice and a lot of wisdom, and oftentimes with experience comes wisdom. And so for some of those grassroots or emerging Black leaders who oftentimes struggle with kind of these internalized expectations as we talked about, or external perceptions, or imposter syndrome about how they should show up. Can you all provide any advice for those who are just kind of starting out and navigating their career, or emerging leaders?
So I think for emerging leaders, people who are just starting out, again, seeking out a mentor. And see, a mentor is not always somebody who's going to meet with you every week. Get a counselor, get a therapist for some in that kind of schedule. But a mentor just may be someone who is open to a quick text, a phone call. You can, you can interact with them, or you may watch them from afar and say, hey, you know what? I like the way Johnny carries himself, or Apple carries herself. Let me see what I can glean and learn from that. I think the other thing from just starting out, and I had to learn this the hard way, sometimes you have to just learn, like I want to think of a Black example, but all I can think about is Willie Nelson. You got to know when to hold them and know when to fold them, right? So
Yeah.
you got to know when to jump into that space and that conversation, and when to sit back and observe and pick your battles. That's what I would say if you're starting out. Don't be the one that's fighting everything every time you're in the space, because unfortunately you're going to get labeled, and it could be just a wrong label, as a person that just brings controversy over and over and over again. I try to, this doesn't work for everybody. I'm talking about me, Tony, how I do. You can be in a room and let's say at a meeting, and hear a whole lot of things that I want to comment about, especially when they're crazy, right?
Yeah.
But what I try to do is to hold on to it, write it down, or hold on to it and pick my thing. That one thing that I really want to get across, and it may be based on a whole lot of stuff that I want to interject all through the meeting. But when I was first starting out, I didn't say anything. I used to go in the rooms and not say a thing. But I learned that doesn't help either. But now what I do is I'm going to say that one. I'm going to drop it right into the middle of the space. I'm just going, and I'm listening for it, and I try to pay attention and to affirm what others are saying and make my notes about, what, this is crazy if it's crazy. I might put all the craziness together in one thing somewhere down the line. That's just how I navigate it.
Thank you. Mr. Fielding, did you have any thoughts to share?
Yeah, the piece I would add is just fundamentally, and I want to make it simple. I think in the journey as a budding professional, I think that what I would say is, just to codify, I think that good attributes are passion, having a level of aptitude and education about a different topic or a different room that you're engaging in, and also having a level of strategic planning. I like that piece. And when I heard that that's what you engage in Violet, strategic planning, right? So if you have those three domains, I think that sometimes we can be in a situation where we're being fueled with just the passion piece, and that's a beautiful thing. But I think that it's also worth equipping yourself with those other elements as well, because it can't just be passion. I'm not going to say it can't just be passion. You're gonna hit some ceilings and you're gonna run into some limitations with just passion. So I think just really looking at it and harmonizing it in a way of, you know, having the passion, making sure that you have the appropriate level of education and aptitude on the topic, and then also having a level of strategic planning as a part of your repertoire. And when you combine all of those things together, you get people like Chrissy Thornton. Shout out to Chrissy.
That's awesome. I love that. I love that.
Can I add something too, though? But walk into the, now, I don't want anybody to think that I'm saying shrink back. Walk into the room like you belong in the room.
Mhm.
All right? Act like you belong in the room. Be prepared to be in the room, and listen also for good questions that you can ask. Don't be afraid to ask clarifying questions, but do your homework.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely do your homework before you engage,
Mm-hmm.
and try to find an ally too.
Absolutely.
Listen long enough, you'll find an ally, and don't be offended when somebody takes your idea, because they are going to do that too. Okay.
I love that, walk into the room, you know, confident, like you belong there, because there's very few rooms. There's no room that I can think of that we shouldn't be in, right? And I'm not a scientist, but I've been in rooms where there were all scientists, and guess what? I felt like I belonged there because I had the mind to ask questions, you know. And so I don't shrink back from thinking like, well, this is just for this person over here. No, there's very few, there's no occasion where we shouldn't feel like we belong there. Now, we've been talking a little bit about internalized, but now we're going to do a little external. I want to talk about what role you think physical appearance and communication style plays in cultivating executive presence, and particularly for Black professionals, and how have you approached these kind of these elements? So I'm gonna throw that to Dr. Draper, and then we're gonna go to over to Mr.
So can we just be honest for a minute?
Yeah, I hope you are.
How we show up physically still matters far more for us than it should.
Yeah.
You know, our hair, our clothing, our tone, and all of it is read through a racialized lens. So as a Black woman executive, I've had to be intentional, professional, but not performative. Polished for the occasion, but still be myself. I can't afford to, neither do I want to, have two sets of clothes. You know, but I have to know when to wear my jeans and when not to wear my jeans, right? So come appropriate for the room, and know your power colors. There's some colors that are power colors. If you're gonna wear that color, go ahead and wear it with pride and confidence, but you know it's a power color. Some other colors, you know, they exude something else, right? So I dress for the seat that I hold, not for the stereotypes that others might have. And so those are other things that you learn over time, right? And so I like my ethnic wear. I like my African wear. I even have a head wrap or two.
Right.
Some of that, you know, I wear it with pride, and I wear it when I want to wear it, but it still has to be appropriate for the occasion.
Right.
I don't want more focus on what I'm wearing than what I'm saying.
Mm.
Okay.
The Black women, we care, there's certain things stylistically that stereotype us, but I said this earlier we had a little in our prep, do you
Mm.
be confident in who you are, right? So I think that's, and when it comes, and so I aim to be authentic. I think that's the word I want to use. I aim for clarity, I've learned that, while what I wear is important, I don't want you to focus on what I have on.
Mhm.
Now we know how we do. We in certain environments, and Johnny, you're gonna chime in on this. Brothers do it too. We comment on what we wear, but that's our appreciation of each other in our culture, right? But I'm not walking into a business room waiting for somebody to comment on what I have on. That's it. I'm done.
Yeah, I think again, going back to my initial perspective, again, operating from a place of what is the ultimate goal of what I'm trying to accomplish, right? And I think that this can be factored into it as well. I know for me, and again, I think this is at the discretion of the individual. For me, I pride myself in not engaging in processes, creating systems with limitations. You know, my son's middle name is Asim, and that means limitless and boundless. And that's how I like to express myself. That's how I like to conduct myself, and that's how I like to live without ceilings, without limitations. So I think in regards to your physical appearance and your communication style. For me, I subscribe to, I'm a more traditionalist. And again, I think that my approach and my presentation and communication style, again, I'm following after the models of individuals like President Obama, because again, he ascended to the highest office in the country, who was the first African American president. So that was truly inspiring to me when he ascended to that office. I'm looking at individuals like our great Governor Wes Moore, in terms of so I'm also watching and looking at people who I aspire to be. Dr. Draper, a couple times you brought up the importance of mentorship. And I think that's important as well. And I think that can be coupled and connected with physical appearance as well. I think it's important for individuals to have mentors and identify mentors. But again, with mentorship, I know for me, I make it a practice to select mentors who are at least 10 years my senior. In addition to that, they've arrived at a place that I'm aspiring to be, right? So they have enough life experiences and tangible experiences that I can extract from. So again, for me, when I'm looking at physical appearance as well and communication style, I'm also reconciling that with individuals that I believe who are ascended to a place that I'm ultimately trying to be. And the goals that I talk about in terms of me identifying the goal and working backwards, they might have already superseded and achieved those goals. So I think that's a part of it as well for me.
I know we're having this conversation. I want to jump in there too. I also look for, I know this may sound strange. I look for mentors. They may look to me, but I also look for multi-generational kind of mentors sometimes. I really am really interested in what younger people think, right?
Mhm.
And what they need and what they can bring. And so you didn't imply this, but I just wanted to say I'm really intentional about, I want to hear, because their perspective maybe, or not maybe, is much different than mine. So it can help me in spaces to navigate spaces to people that are younger than I am. Most folk that, if I used your benchmark, Johnny, most of my contemporaries have long retired. If the ones that, if they're 10, 15 years older, they've retired. But I find I learned so much from the younger people as well.
Yeah, me too as well. I lean to my son and other young people as well with helping me navigate this new AI world that we're we're not encountering on that we are in. It is here and it is real. So
I
yeah,
love the AI world.
And it's wonderful.
gotta lean into it. I'm recommending that everyone lean into it.
Yeah.
Me too, because the Afro is really a tech business.
Mhm.
A lot of people come to me now because of the technology, but look, that thing it's changing so fast, it's hard to keep up.
Yeah.
I'm trying to get 10 AI's programs that I understand really well in like a month or two, and I'm loving it. So
Yeah.
very interesting. Jade,
Yeah.
I know we are coming up on time. We only have a few minutes, so I'm gonna throw a question out to Jade, but there was one question that was in the chat that I think Jade that we might want to try and tackle.
Yeah, absolutely. I know. I mean, this is a very insightful and powerful conversation, and I feel like we need more time, even more than an hour. But I will get to one of the questions for you all that's in the chat, and it's around what advice do you have for those of us who manage some millennials and Gen Z who feel that what society thinks is professional does not align with what they see as a professional? So again, it's what advice do you have for those who manage millennials and Gen Z in terms of what they feel or who feel that what society thinks is professional doesn't necessarily align with what they see as professionals?
Okay, so yeah, that's a great question. I think that, for example, I believe in cultural pride and situational wisdom, right? So I think the question is, will what I have on affirm or distract from the message I need to deliver?
Mhm.
Will it open doors or give someone an excuse to close one? Sometimes our close are conversation starters, other times they're quiet expressions of sovereignty. It's our choice in terms of what we wear and how we define society, right?
Mm.
How we define. So in a group of millennials, and everybody is, because if you take a look really at any group, a lot of times we're aligned, right? We're aligned with our age. Well, we should, let me say it another way. We should be aligned with our age, right? We should be. So I think that it just depends on what you want to accomplish in that room. And not make it a controversial thing and still not diminish your own style, your own way of showing up. And there's some things, regardless of style. Okay, I'm gonna get in trouble with this. There's some things, regardless of what the style is, your mind, let me make mine. My body frame doesn't work for, I don't care whether it's in style or not.
Right.
It's just not flattering and appropriate for that time,
Mm-hmm.
For that place.
Even if it's in style.
Yeah.
So you got to know what works for you. And
Yes.
at what time. Okay, Johnny.
It speaks to something you said earlier. We didn't delve too deeply into this, but it's about reading the room sometimes. What you're talking about.
It's reading the room. It's what do I want? Do I want my message to be heard, or do I want my style to be just to be remembered? You know, and that's when you conform. But it does mean that when I go to the baseball game, I'm not wearing my black tie. And when I go to black tie, I'm not wearing my baseball cap.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and again, like Dr. Draper shared in terms of, what she's outlining is what us as leaders, because again, the question was connected to how to manage and lead essentially the millennials who may see it from a different lens or a different perspective. So again, I think that was a great outline that Dr. Draper gave. And again, it will be up to us as leaders, first and foremost, having a relationship with the people that are reporting to us, and then educating them around what Dr. Draper outlined in terms of being able to make that assessment. And again, is it really worth it in terms of fighting that fight?
This has been fantastic. We are at the 1 o'clock hour, and the truth is we could go probably another hour or two.
Yeah.
We probably are going to have Black Executive Presence 2.0 at
Yeah.
some point. You have dropped so many nuggets on us, and there's a lot to walk away from and to think about. And I want to thank both of you, Dr. Draper, Mr. Fielding. I got your name right at the end of the presentation, but I finally do. I think I got it right. I'm so sorry about it. I think names are important. So, but thank you so much. Thank you so much for all your insightfulness, your wisdom that you shared with us. This is the conversation that we have to have so that we prepare and promote the next group of Black executives that are out there that feel like they need this. I saw someone in the chat said, I needed this today. And so thank you so much. And I want to thank my co-moderator, Jade, who brings so much to the table. If you are a Black executive director out there and you're not part of the Black ED network, you're missing something, please contact Jade, find her on LinkedIn. And again, I want to thank the Black Leadership Circle for this opportunity to be here today and to just be able to bring this conversation forward. Like I said, we'll look for 2.0 and what that entails.
Thank you, guys.
All right, thank you so much.